What I'm going to do is give you the tour I normally give to people, okay? And I don't highlight everything because there are areas I just don't know anything about, okay? And I tell people that. Like when we go up to costumes, I say, I don't know anything about dresses. We're going to walk through the square, okay? But I tend to focus on Pioneer Hall and POP, and then we'll go through Pioneer Town, go up through the art galleries, across the art gallery south through Petroleum Wing. I would say nothing there other than all I know about oil is how much gas costs. But it has been renovated and exemplary, and we'll go back this way, and then I'll talk about the dinosaur bones because I know a hell of a lot about that. So that's how it's going to go. And like I tell anybody who goes with me, this is better as a conversation rather than me talking at you for an hour. That's not useful and it's not constructive to you all. Okay, so if I make something unclear, just interrupt the discussion. So let's have a discussion for an hour. Okay, fair? Okay, come outside.
Tour's over. Get out.
And you can hear better in the second set of squares from the bottom of the stairs.
Oh, Michael, this is a volunteer.
Just a volunteer.
Michael Pear, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm the head custodian.
Not true.
Okay.
Got a feature right shoes there.
That's right. This is so nobody thinks I'm a deer and shoots me. Okay. Normally, this is where I always start because our Pioneer Hall is one of our greatest assets. It's our greatest artifact, and this is why we start out here. And that's an important thing, to use our front porch as our front porch, and that's basically what I do out here. I talk about the fact that it is not Pueblo Deco. Pioneer Hall has been published at least 3 times that I know of, probably more, and usually it's published calling it Pueblo Deco. It's not. It's Southwestern Deco. It has no parts that relate to Pueblo in architecture, but it does on the facade have parts that relate to the Deco movement in general and the Southwest in particular. I also talk about architecture when it's begun in 1932, and then we opened to the public in April of 33. That's important, and that was a big event for us. I'm telling you this a little more than I would tell a patron. We fired cannons on the front lawn. We did all kinds of things on our opening day. Anyway, so it's Southwestern Deco. It's very much part of that movement. And architecture at this time had 2 jobs. 1, to connect the building to the place in which it's built. And 2, say something about its purpose on the exterior, but don't give the whole thing away. And we kind of cheat because it says museum right there, so that kind of gives that away. But there are allegorical things on the exterior of the building. And I always start with the prickly pear frieze that runs along the top. I worked here 5 years before I even knew what that was, and I went up on the roof one day and leaned over, and it even has the thorns in it. I don't know if you can see those, but the blossoms are in between what I guess I'd call them fronds. So that's prickly pear that runs all the way across, and they picked it up on the Petroleum Wing. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. And then also the medallions with the protruding coyote, or probably a lobo wolf, a buffalo, a jackrabbit, and a pronghorn. Over there are medallions that relate to the petroleum industry on the front. So they did a pretty good job in marrying the 2 together, although this is limestone now. The limestone has discolored and it's very difficult to clean it properly. Probably would have to require some sort of enzymatic cleaner to get it clean. I hope we never paint it. That would be a mistake. But nevertheless, then there are a couple of other things. Of course, any good architect makes reference to architecture from the past. So these are engaged columns, in this case, that are fluted just like Doric columns you'd see in any classical building. The capitals are highly stylized, okay? So they aren't really capitals like you'd see on a pillar. And the other emblems on the outside, and this is something we probably need to address, are the bas-reliefs that are on either side. And the way I usually talk about it is it's flora and fauna on the outside with prairie dogs and burrowing owls. The next set is a cattle drive, which makes perfect sense. The third one I'll come back to because that makes no sense for us. And the third one is Southern Plains Indians hunting buffalo. As far as we know, and from my own research, the bas-reliefs were based on picture postcards given to stone carvers, I believe, in Indiana. You get 2 different stories, whether Guy Carlander was an assistant architect on this and he was in charge of the building decoration. We're not really sure. He could have been or not. The main architects are Emmett Rittenberry and Macon Carter, C-A-R-D-A-R. Their names are on the building. Both of them collaborated on this building. The story is that Rittenberry never worked for WT again or the university system. but he did design many of the schools in Amarillo. That's a nice connection. He designed San Jacinto, Wolfland, Bivens. Carlander did Landrigan and so on. So that's a nice connection. And he also, Rittenberry also designed the Bivens building on Polk Street and the Levine's building on Polk Street and some others. Okay, so they were very prominent architects. Carter continued to do other buildings. He did our annex, which is the old library building in 52, and then he also did with the old Ag and Nursing building in 42. Yes.
Can I ask a question? Is the Levine's building the one they tore down recently?
No, that's
that one's
Blackbirds.
still up.
That's
Okay.
Yeah, they're gonna retain Levine's.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so back to the bas reliefs. The third one appears to me to be Lewis and Clark looking across the wide Missouri. And I always kind of make a joke here and say, here in West Texas, we're not obliged to put water in the river, so we call them rivers, okay? So that's who it is. I mean, Sacagawea is missing, but it really is that. I mean, it's the craziest thing you ever saw. Now, not most importantly, but very important to us, are the eagles on either side. Those are American eagles, don't ever forget that. Cowboy and Indian, right, in case you don't know what we're about. And then the steerhead is important because it's a roped steerhead. In other words, he's symbolic of knowledge that's been captured and contained within the four walls of this institution. You understand? And that symbol of knowledge and education runs throughout architecture up to a certain point to the international style, which I just call ugly, which is mainly post-war. It's just horrible. And the reference is our 66 edition. Ugly with a capital U, right? Okay, the cattle brands. You have to remember, when the society is founded in 1921, there's no Texas Tech.
Pretty.
Texas Tech isn't founded until 1923, okay? And they're still learning to read down there, so. That's one. So Texas Tech Junior College was still an idea, and so the cattle brands are not specifically Panhandle. They extend much further south, even south, including the ranches that were down there in Lubbock. That's important to remember. John Arnott, who was a longtime cattleman in Amarillo, created a partial key. I picked up that key that we have in the archives and tried to decipher as best I could all but a couple of the cattle brands where they were, okay? That is something that I probably should make available to somewhere so you can hand it out, because people ask about the brands all the time. You think so?
Yeah.
All right, so so all those different, and just so you'll know, this is terracotta. Cast terracotta is a very popular building material during the 30s and especially in Deco. They continued through the 30s and 40s and 50s because the cast terracotta images on what's now, it's computer science and engineering now, right? Go over there, and I looked at those the other night. They're way cool.
It's very cool.
It's very cool. Now, on our side, it's a quotation from Mirabeau B. Lamar, who was second governor of the, second president, okay, after Sam Houston. That's what it says. That quotation is from him. And then they use terracotta there. But the Amarillo Globe News building also uses terracotta over the entrance so that you can connect in different ways. So, cast terracotta, and some of the brands are stylized. That's important to remember. The second one from the left took me weeks to figure out what it was because they changed it so much, okay? It actually came from a man named Edwin Torrey, who eventually got his ranch absorbed by the LS's.
Second one from the left where?
On the top row. And that's the way I did it was, I did it by rows, so right, just to the right of the XIT. You're right. It's actually a TS, but they shortened the top of the T so much, it looks like a J, okay? And also, all the way to the right, the leaning F, that's a lazy F. It should be flat, right? So they took some liberties with this, probably artistic liberties. Okay, the rest of the facade, cholla on either side here. Obviously a rope motif, right? Cholla, yucca, and we do not have barrel cactus. So there are some liberties.
We do
That
now.
actually makes it kind of interesting. Cast aluminum. Aluminum is a big deal during the 30s. Huge deal in Deco architecture. Unfortunately, we had someone who on staff who claimed to be able to redo the patina on there. As you can see, it did not work. Personally, I think we need to fix that because it looks kind of trashy. And what I would suggest is that we find a sculptor. This is also part of the tour. Is you have to put up the trash. We should hire a furniture conservator to remove this black stuff and leave it alone, frankly. Because I don't think we can recreate it properly and it'll stay. So this is actually, in my opinion, better than this, is peeling black. That looks like an unpainted house, right? So something to put on the deal.
What
So
did it originally look like? Was it shinier or?
it looked like this.
Oh, so it had like the dark.
But this is 17 years old. So if we want to have it re-black, kind of, you just need to make sure that's in the budget. We can do it, but we need to make sure we maintain it, right? So, any questions about the facade?
Never seen the doors closed. Well, yeah, why would you?
No questions?
No.
This building, because it's on a university campus, is protected up to a certain point. We need to remember that, okay?
Where
All right,
was
come on
the stone
inside.
quarried from?
What?
Where was the stone quarried from?
I've been told a couple of places, probably Indiana. Like that's where the stone quarries are. Okay, a couple of things. This is not the original slab. Okay, this is poured over the top of this marble. Okay. Now, as I understand it, this was street level here, and for some reason they excavated the street, probably for drainage, because this was flat at one time.
Oh.
That's why you have that weird curve out there. Okay, and also why the water gathers there. It's just a hazard that needs to be addressed. So, of course, the wheelchair ramp wasn't here before. The lamps are original and they need to be repainted, as you can see. And we can't let WT pick the color. They did a nice job when they put in the ramp because it echoes some of the metalwork inside the building, specifically in the store. That's where that comes from. That's what this ought to look like, in my opinion. We want to echo that. That'd be a nice, tasteful thing to do. This is just standard pipe. And I think we ought to play up the architecture more than we do. That's just my opinion. Now, before we go in, I want you to look up here on the bottom side of the lintel. On either end, you all see that fan shape at either end? At the bottom, there is a silhouette of the museum. The only reason we know that is early photographs of the museum seen from a distance, that's how it looked. Because remember, there's nothing out here when we open. There's nothing out here, okay? This is prairie. So what I've deduced is, because we deal a lot in symbolism, more than likely that's a symbol of the museum, and light is usually equated with knowledge. So we capture knowledge in here and then it emanates out as light, right? The Age of Enlightenment, anybody ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yes.
Note the Pioneer Hall in the terrazzo floor.
Who did this? Do you know?
Probably Zacatini Brothers.
That makes sense.
Notice the horseshoe in the floor.
I know a lot about the Zacatini
Technically, it's
because I just
actually
listened to this
upside
whole
down.
walk. Oh yeah.
Maybe that.
Yeah.
Why waste look? Okay. Terrazzo is important because terrazzo is a very common floor material, and when I do the tours, I have people pay attention to where the terrazzo changes color, especially when we do the walking tours of downtown Amarillo. The Zacatini brothers in Amarillo, very fine craftsmen in building this stuff. Before we carpeted POP, we had a place where a workman's button could be seen in this. And basically what terrazzo is marble oatmeal poured into a form, ground down, and then highly polished. So that button, I thought was cool. I mean, it talked about the fact that human beings build these things, right?
Right.
So I don't like carpet anyway. I think it's ugly. I'm sorry?
What's it called again? I'm sorry.
Terrazzo. Terrazzo.
AKA marble oatmeal.
Marble oatmeal.
I dig that. That's
Okay, Pioneer Hall, starting with the vestibule. This is carved walnut. Notice it echoes the columns we saw outside. In this case, the fluting is convex, not concave. Stylized capitals again, and there's that fan thing again, right? So it's tying it together both on the exterior and the interior. Now, you cannot do, in a good piece of architecture, especially here, too many symbols because you need the walls to be covered with things. These niches that you see here are our old back windows, right? Filled in when we added the 4852 addition, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Okay, but there are a couple of symbols. The fan shape here, and then this is stylized free. This is what we call either egg and dark or triglyph and metapede. That'll be on the quiz.
Yeah.
Egg
Can
is
you
dark,
spell that?
okay, that's borrowed from classical architecture, but highly stylized. And that's the key word to Deco architecture is stylization to the purest geometric shape. So circles, squares, cylinders, and so on. Pure geometric shape, and there's a tendency to stretch things out and elongate them. That's part of the deco movement. Now, the two besides this, the other symbol is this one here, where the pilaster meets the beam, right? Right in the corner. That's supposed to be a stylized Indian feather dance bustle. If you ever go to a powwow, the fancy dancers wear on their back concentric circles of feathers, okay? So what comes down and comes out, those are feathers. And in the center is part of that bustle, okay? Obviously here to remind us of the peoples who were here before Anglos came. That's important, okay? Now, when we renovated Pioneer Hall, we did paint analysis, and these are as close to the original colors as we can get. When I got here, it was blinding white, okay? The windows were not opened up. We had little wall niches with mannequins dressed as the Six Flags of Texas. And there were 8 of them. They were a little bit cheesy because what the exhibits in Pioneer Hall took the whole Six Flags over Texas approach. Some of those were moved downstairs, but not all of them. And we really are working our way through to make them right. Okay, the mural program started a year after the museum was opened. Half of it is New Deal. There are 8 murals in here, only 8? Right, 8 murals in here, only 4 of them are New Deal. They are not WPA except for 2 of them. Not all New Deal murals are WPA, okay? There were 4 different art programs under Roosevelt's New Deal. The first one was called the Public Works of Art Project, and frankly, it was a pilot program to see if he could legitimately put artists to work under the federal government. So the job was to decorate pre-existing public buildings with art. Murals, easel paintings, some cases prints, and in some cases sculpture. Most of the portable art disappeared. If it's still glued to the wall, it's usually still in place. So the PWAP murals are Goodnight and Coronado. Now, Mr. Bugby was the first to make a proposal to the PWA committee in Dallas. And Dallas was the central receiving place for Texas and Oklahoma projects. The U.S. was divided into sections. So what one did was that one submitted a sketch of usually an overall mural program, and in most cases a single mural. What Mr. Bugby did was he sent murals, sketches for all of them. We were very lucky in that we found all of those in the house, so we know what the original program was going to look like. He did them in watercolor, and then he also did one of them in oil, okay? Now, what happened when he submitted the proposal, and remember the wages were craftsman's wages, $42.50 a week. That's all you made. He was asked if he could hire an assistant. They asked him in Dallas, can you hire another artist to put more people to work, you see? And he said, okay, and they suggested Ben Carlton me from Amarillo. And he said, I don't want him to be my assistant, I want him to be my partner. That's why you have 3 Mead murals here and the other 5 are by Bugby. I'll get to that in a minute. So, this is called the Catalan here. Mr. Bugby painted it between January and June of 1934, as did Mead. Mead still lived in Amarillo at the time. They are on canvas, they are glued to the wall, using federally approved adhesives, federally approved paint, federally approved canvases. You were limited by that. So, the whole plan was to show the history of humans in the Texas Panhandle, beginning over here. That's what the cycle is about. Now, it got skewed a little bit later. At first, those are put up, and here's what they were told. They said, send us a sketch, a full-scale sketch of each one, and plan your mural cycle in case we run out of money. Well, of course they ran out of money. So these 2 murals were the only ones in place from 34 to 1940. This is called Coronado's Coming, and what it is, it shows when Coronado finally realizes that he's been led on a wild goose chase by his Indian guide, the guy in the front, kind of the turban-like thing. They call him El Turco, the Turk. He was probably a Delaware Indian, and he was probably a slave, and he was basically trying to lead Coronado on a wild goose chase where they started dying of starvation and thirst. Minutes after this scene, the Turk gets garroted, okay? You see the Padre mural to the left, that is a reference to the first Thanksgiving held in Palo Canyon. So it wasn't with the Pilgrims, it was actually here, okay? And this is 1541, right? And so just a couple of things. One is the Coronado figure, that's Ben Carl meets brother-in-law, fellow artist Granville Bruce. Okay. Goodnight was a very close friend of Mr. Bugby. Dave McCormick is in the back on the left side, the guy with the red hair. And in the back, Judd Campbell. Judd Campbell's the other guy. There are 16 head of cattle, one each for each 100 head that he brought down from Colorado. The PAT brand is what was Goodnight's brand in Pueblo, Colorado. Okay. Now you'll notice that they look a little like Longhorns. They're not. They're actually crossbred with Longhorns with Shorthorns and Durhams. Okay. A couple of other symbols. The sticks that Goodnight rides across, those are teepee poles. There's also matate just in the lower right corner. There's also a rabbit. And you can use that in treasure hunts. People like to find the money. Okay? So references to the peoples who were here before. Meade's mural is less symbolic. So 6 years go by, the museum gets a grant from WPA, the true WPA, the Works Progress Administration. We get 2 more murals. Ranch headquarters here and Antelope Creek over here. Now, here's where Meade and Bugby start using more and more of the collection in their murals. Now, the saddle that Goodnight's riding in the mural, for example, in 1934, he didn't get that, and that's supposed to represent 1876 when he brings the first herd in, right, June. He didn't get that saddle until about 1902. That's that saddle right over there, right? But that was the whole idea, was to put the objects in the murals. Bugby goes to the RO Ranch on this one. The reason we know that is in the sketch, the chuck wagon says RO branded in the side. It's not in the mural, probably because he used some JA cowboys as model. We know who most everybody is. The guy on the bucking horse is oh crap, anyway, Jake Chamberlain. Mr. Bugby is the second cowboy from the left in the back. James Haley is the third from the left. Okay? We know that because of some research we did way back in the day. So, 1940, and when Meade was trying to finish this in 1940, L.F. Sheffy, our field secretary at the time, was pestering him because he wanted it up by homecoming, October 1940. Well, Meade got mad about it, and he didn't sign it. That's why it's not signed. And so, and then again, they're glued to the wall, federal pace, all that stuff. 16 years go by before they started up again. And by that time, there's no more New Deal, obviously, and the society undertook to finish the program. Meade, by this time, is living in Dallas. And he agrees to do one last mural, and then he says, after this, I'm done, because it's just too hard to do this long distance. I'm back up to that. They were painted on stretch canvases, brought to the museum on flatbed trucks, and then pulled in the front door and glued to the wall. So, this is Meade over here. He used family members. He used a neighbor to represent Quan Parker, second Indian on the left with his arms crossed. That's who that's supposed to be. You'll notice the careta, it's the same one in POP, right? That saddle is in our saddle collection, one on the left. So most of the artifacts in his mural are in the museum's collection. The Buffalo Slaughter mural over here is interesting not only because of this particular date in the 1880s when the buffalo were being decimated, but it's also where the artist uses a trick, something he learned from a Taos artist named W. Herbert Dunton, and he said, always take the viewer into your painting and lead them back and forth, but never out. So the buffalo all die in a circle, you see that? And their heads all turn back to the middle, you see that? Or their point to the middle. So you just follow them back and forth around in a circle. Okay? So what he's got is the skinning king coming up in the back. Generally a buffalo hunter didn't hunt mounted. So that's a little bit of artistic license. So this is 56, and they're done, right? With the east and west side, right? Bugby takes this in 57, it's called Iowa Hunting Buffalo, and it's the biggest, it's 22 feet wide. That's a big hunk of canvas, okay? And notice at the bottom of the doorways that the canvas echoes the OG opening that you go through. By the way, that's Islamic architecture.
OG.
Most Spanish architecture is actually Islamic, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so, and also one thing, people don't get with buffalo gun, they don't have their tongues hanging out. You see how their tongues hanging out? Little details that visitors love to look. They'll send, look, there's tongues hanging out. The buffalo calf over here is in our collection. Over here. He's in our collection. We have a mountain buffalo calf. Okay, we usually make money. Okay, and then Bugby finishes this one in 1958 over the vestibule. Notice how his three of his murals are cowboys, ranch. Well, that's what he did, right? We will tell you that originally over the doorway there was a sod house with a farming family. The only reason we know that is we see it in the notes, and then we found the sketch at changed simply because we moved away. There's also some references to buffalo soldiers and the military presence being part of the site at one time. Can anybody find the one woman in the whole site? There's only one. Doing what a woman does, holding the label. Right? So you can use that as well. That's important. The models over here, for example, echo the model over here. The antelope structure. That stands on the hoe in our collection. That pottery behind his foot in our collection. So it's all about our collection in here. So when we renovated Pioneer Hall in 2001, we wanted it to be a table of contents. What are you going to see? Archaeology, paleontology, natural history, transportation, history, petroleum over there, and then we've had some other bits and pieces. Okay? Any questions about Pioneer Hall? This is our big splash. That's the way I always approach it.
Well, one thing that I always mention, and you probably do too, is this building opened in 1933. This was the Depression years. But the people of the community believed so strongly in the mission of the society that they dug deep in their pockets and gave whatever money they could. They were also giving things for the collection, artifacts. But for building the museum, it was strictly money that was being collected.
And that book over there that you see is a facsimile of the register for what people brought in. There are nickels and quarters and all kinds of things. Becky's right. It was a challenge grant from the state of Texas. They would give us $25,000 if we matched $25,000. Now, $25,000 in 1929 when they started the fundraising campaign. What happens in 1929?
Crash.
You bet. Black Tuesday, right? That's important in your narrative when you talk about this. Is people rose up in a time of crisis, and really, as Becky said, they really dug deep. And that's a tribute to the people that came here. Wallace Stegner calls those the stickers, people who stick, right?
And to further the connection with WT, there was a kind of a competing fundraising drive going on to raise money to build, it was a dorm for Mary Hudspeth, right? Was it Hudspeth?
I believe so.
And they knew they were not going to make their goal. They weren't going to make the money. So what they had, they gave to the society.
Right.
And this room over here, the
Mary Hudspeth
alcove was the Mary Hudspeth room. That's where the art was exhibited.
Yeah, that was the art room. This was the museum's library and archive. We had a field secretary, and that was a WT faculty member after Mr. Haley. Haley's hired in 1921. Sheffy succeeds him, but Sheffy is a WT history professor. Hattie Anderson was never a formal employee of Panhandle-Plains Historical Society, as far as I know. But she was the driving force behind the founding of the society, which, as you know, was modeled after the Missouri Historical Society, which has a great track record. Okay? So that's Pioneer Hall. Any questions about Pioneer Hall?
So the original extent of the building included the museum stores, the library, and how far?
That was a library and archive.
Okay.
I will show you the back door, and that's the stop where Petroleum Wing starts.
Okay.
Right? And also, one of the things, and Heather's done a nice job in here, is taking advantage of the architecture in there, especially in the metalwork, and echoing that in some things that we've done over the years. So that, and the mezzanine, mezzanines are just cool to make from, I'm basically a little kid. But the mezzanine, that was where the offices were.
Oh.
Yeah, for everybody, but there were like 3 of us. Okay, let's go this way.